Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, I want to talk about a trade that I think could really help the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, obviously, by the title and the thumbnail, you can kind of deduce who I'm talking about here. But really, when it comes to the Seattle Kraken, there's a few options that we can explore here. And the first player that I wanted to highlight is not necessarily a player that, I stumbled upon or anything like that. No, the managing editor of TheLeafsNation.com, John Stizer? I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, John. If you're watching this video, I don't think that you are, though. But at the same time, John mentioned Carson Soucy is a guy who he would really like to see the Maple Leafs trade for, and I did a little bit of digging on it myself, and I agree. I would also like the Maple Leafs to trade for Carson Soucy. Who is Carson Soucy anyway? Well, I'm glad you asked. Carson Soucy is a 6'5", 211-pound defenseman, and people are saying, Steven, you're really speaking to me here right now, but damn, he shoots left-handed. Well, that's not really an issue because he's played both sides this year, and for a guy his size, he's actually not that bad of a skater. We'll go through his advanced numbers in a minute, but he's 27 years old, turning 28 at the end of this season, and still has another year left on his deal beyond this one, at just $2.75 million. If we're taking a look at his player card here on evolvinghockey.com, you can see that he's having a decent little season for himself. He's playing just about second pair minutes for the Seattle Kraken, and he's been effective for them. In doing these videos, I always like when I check to see who they've been playing with for the majority of their seasons, and I see that the minutes are spread out all over the place, because that's going to allow us to get a good sense of what this player is with and without his teammates. In taking a look at his with and without numbers from this season, they're encouraging right off the bat, because usually when you see guys in red, and a lot of them very low in this chart, that means that players without them are bad defensively, but better when they're playing with them. But the main thing that we're looking for in this chart is that we don't want to see any blue in this bottom half here, because then that means that Carson Soucy is significantly worse without that one specific player. If we're taking a look at puckiq.com here, we can see that Carson Soucy doesn't necessarily spend a large amount of ice time playing up against the other team's best players. But when he does do it, it is in a heavier defensive role. And in that heavier defensive role, he is losing the shot attempt battle, but not by much, and is actually a positive relative to the rest of his teammates. In terms of the dangerous Fenwick for and against, which measures the quality of unblocked shot attempts, so how dangerous those shot attempts are, he's actually a positive in the actual numbers and one of the best in terms of the relative numbers compared to his teammates. If I had to guess what Carson Soucy's heat map would look like in his own defensive zone, I would guess that we'd see a lot of stuff on the perimeter, but not very much coming from the inside. And that would explain why he's losing the shot attempt battle, but in terms of the actual quality of them, there's not much there. And look at that. The heat map looks exactly like I thought it would. Not too much happening in front of the net, and a lot of things happening on the perimeter. Now, obviously, that's not all just him, but if we're looking at the 5-on-5 with and without defensive numbers, Seattle is a much better team defensively with him on the ice compared to without him. He's taken on a bit of a larger role with the Seattle Kraken this year, but overall, his last 3 seasons, even with the Minnesota Wild, not that bad. He is a bigger player, like we said, at 6'5" and over 200 pounds, but he doesn't necessarily throw the body a lot. But his 6.48 hits per 60 minutes would be second on the Leafs behind Ilya Lyubushkin. I wouldn't call him a tone setter, but in terms of hockey, I wouldn't call him a pacifist either. My overall thoughts on the player is that he's not going to be the savior of anything, and he's not going to necessarily wow you either, but you can play him in your top 4, and he's not going to be dependent on anyone else to just be a good player. In terms of Jake Muzzin, I know the latest news on him was that if he is healthy before the end of the regular season, the Maple Leafs are not going to hold him out. But at the same time, I don't really know what people are expecting them to say in regards to that situation. But you can't take anything that they say for face value, because Sheldon Keefe also said that it was ridiculous to suggest the idea that Frederik Andersen would go on an LTIR conditioning stint with the Marlies, and then it very much happened. But because Carson Soucy can play both the left and the right side, it just gives the Maple Leafs some options. If Jake Muzzin doesn't come back until the playoffs, well, you can play him on the left side. If you wanted to play him with Jake Muzzin when and if he does come back, you could. I keep referencing this quote from Sheldon Keefe from the middle of January in terms of what Jake Muzzin has been struggling with this year, and it's mainly moving the puck and making decisions with it. And while I don't think a guy like Carson Soucy would necessarily help him with that, I don't think that he would be a detriment if paired next to him. Because like we mentioned, even though he is 6'5" and over 200 pounds, he's not the worst skater. In terms of what it would cost to acquire Carson Soucy, I'm not 100% sure, because it's not like his name is being tossed around in trade rumors. He's just a player that I really like. But if we're looking at the Seattle Kraken, they're nowhere near the playoff picture this year, and I don't think they will be next year either. And then he's going to be a UFA at the end of his contract. If they wanted to get something for this player now, they have a lot of other defensemen, and I would be willing to pay. From the expansion draft, we learned apparently how much the Seattle Kraken just loved Alex Kerfoot, and that's why Kyle Dubas needed to sacrifice Jared McCann. So maybe the Maple Leafs are able to create a trade package centered around Alex Kerfoot. Maybe it's Kerfoot, a second, and a mid-tier prospect, or Kerfoot, a second, and a lower-level prospect. I don't know. But at that point, you've upgraded your blue line without giving up any sort of major assets. And I wrote an article for theleafsnation.com that I will leave linked in the video description, arguing why the Maple Leafs should upgrade their top 6 forward core anyway. And a deal like that still leaves you room to go out there and get an upgrade in your top 6 forward core. Potentially maybe even go out there and get another defenseman. Who knows? Depends on the defenseman, and it depends on the forward. In terms of Seattle's other defensemen, a guy like Mark Giordano is a shade of what he used to be offensively, but defensively, playing in about a second to even first pair role with them this year, has been quite good. And just like Carson Soucy, it seems like he's had a plethora of different partners this year. In terms of the 5-on-5 with and without numbers, the Seattle Kraken are a better team both offensively and especially defensively with Mark Giordano on the ice. If we're looking at his Seattle teammates with and without him this year, it fits that same mold we were talking about earlier. There's red towards the bottom portion and no blue, which means that there's no one that he's specifically relying upon to produce good results, and players are better with him and worse without him. I know he's 38 years old, but in terms of Seattle defensemen, he's third in terms of time on ice against elite competition, and in those minutes, he's playing more of a neutral role than Carson Soucy, but still prominently a defensive role. And in that defensive role, he is losing the shot attempt battle, but not by much, and still is a positive relative to the rest of his teammates. And the same sort of deal in terms of the dangerous Fenwick 4, so the quality of the unblocked shot attempts. And according to Frank Siravalli of Daily Faceoff, the rumored return for a guy like Mark Giordano is not a first-round pick. Apparently, around a second, maybe a little bit more than that, would get it done. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, because Mark and I did go to the same high school. Obviously not at the same time, but then again, someone on Twitter did say that they thought that I was 40 years old. Let me know in the comment section how old do you think I am. But I don't care that Mark Giordano is 38 years old. All the numbers check out. He's playing over 21 and a half minutes a night for them in a defensive first role. Still a good defensive player. Maybe not the offensive player he once was, but that's not why we'd be acquiring him. And it wouldn't be for a first round pick either. It's not the Nick Foligno trade. It's not the Nick Foligno trade. It's not signing Joe Thornton and asking him to play with Austin Matthews or Mitch Marner either. It's not what that is. It's a second round pick on a guy who's playing pretty damn good this year. Now, even with Jake Muzzin on LTIR for the remainder of the season, Mark Giordano's $6.75 million cap hit is not necessarily ideal. It would limit what the Maple Leafs are able to do in the grand scheme of things. And if you were to ask Seattle to retain 50% on that, well, now maybe it's more than a second round pick that you'd have to give up. But then again, more than half the league is using LTIR money right now and is not in a position to take on that high of a cap hit. So maybe it's just implied that Seattle would need to retain, and it wouldn't be more than a second. I don't know. If it's more than a second, I'm out, because I'm just not interested in paying a premium for rental players. I'm so much more interested in acquiring players with term on their contracts. Obviously, if you're looking at Seattle Kraken defenseman, the pipe dream is Jamie Alexiak. He also has a no-trade clause, and he signed with Seattle very early on, so maybe he wants to stay with Seattle, but at the same time, he is a Toronto boy, and he's also 6'7" and over 250 pounds, and he's kind of like a shotgun, in the sense where if you got a problem over there and you put Jamie Alexiak on the ice, you don't got a problem over there anymore. He's having a really good year. He's been good for a number of years. I don't see the Kraken parting ways with him for anything short of an absolute king's ransom. Open shot! Fate of the universe on the line. The Martians got the death beam pointed at Earth. You gotta give up Topi Nymella, Matthew Nyes, and a first-round pick? According to Vancouver Canucks fans, you want JT Miller! But, no, if the Maple Leafs are gonna give up a package anywhere close to that, it would be for a guy like Jamie Alexiak, but probably, maybe even someone better than that. But that's gonna be it for the video, guys. As always, make sure to let me know what your thoughts and opinions are down below, and make sure to like the video if you did like it, and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, I'll see you in the next one.